Hey, welcome to Half the Battle. You know, it's been about a month since we did a character review, so it's about damn time we got back to that.
And we've got a great one today, the second ever female G.I. Joe figure. So meet CoverGirl. This figure was released in 1983 with all original body parts.
And straight away, I have to mention the thing I dislike about this toy.
It's the head sculpt. It's too damn big, especially compared to other figures of the time. Hell, from behind it looks like she's got a balloon for a head. This wasn't the first figure with this problem, as Scarlet, who was released a year before, also suffered from this. The additional problem here is that both characters are supposed to have long hair, but the sculpting doesn't reflect that, like, at all.
I suppose Hasbro was on a learning curve when it came to sculpting female heads, something they hadn't done before in the G.I. Joe scale.
And they did learn, since things improved a lot 1 year later when they released the Baroness, who looked a lot better. I wouldn't mind so much, but CoverGirl is supposed to be this beautiful model, and she's presented with a balloon head. It also doesn't help that her face looks like she hasn't slept for 3 days.
Moving on.
I don't have a problem with the rest of the figure. It's a nice sculpt with some cool detailing. I dig how she's got an open leather jacket, and the colors, brown tan and a bit of green, work very well. She's got a patch on her left arm that's some kind of animal head. It's too small to really make out, could be a wolf or a bear, though given what her job is, I'm assuming it's a wolverine, whose head looks like something between a wolf and a bear anyway. Another neat tidbit is that she's got a calculator molded on her left leg.
It's little things like that that make the G.I. Joe toy line awesome.
Overall, this figure would have been great, but the primitive head sculpting does drag it down a bit.
A shame, really.
And that was the only toy CoverGirl got in the original line. The mold, however, was reused outside of the US. In Brazil, it was part of the Commandos and Masayo line, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. There, she was the character...
What was her name?
This is Sparta!
Yeah, she's a secret agent called Sparta. The cool thing about this figure is that she got card art, since it was, carded. The only difference with the American toy is that there are some small color variations, like a different shade of green on the boots and belt, and a different complexion. This figure was also released as Sparta in Argentina, again with slight color variations.
Now, I mentioned CoverGirl only got one toy in the original line, but she did get a few more in later years.
Well, unless you want to get pedantic, since all later versions aren't technically called CoverGirl.
Let me show you.
Meet Agent Courtney Krieger. This figure was released in 2006 with all original body parts. Now this is much more like it! What a difference 23 years in toy making technology makes! Yeah, it took that long for CoverGirl to get a second freaking figure.
Hasbro sure loves making toys of female characters, don't they?
And the kicker is, this toy only exists because of a fan poll. Yeah, Hasbro were making comic 3-packs at the time. You'd get a comic and figures of 3 characters that appeared in the issue. They held a poll to see what comic from the new Devil's Due series would be included, and fans picked issue 16. So they got CoverGirl, Spirit, and Hannibal. No, I'm not gonna tell you who the hell Hannibal is.
Maybe one day I will, but not now.
I will say he has nothing to do with the A-Team, more's the pity. Anyway, back to Miss Krieger. Yeah, they used the name on her original file card because copyright troubles with the name CoverGirl. This is one of my favorite figures from the more modern stuff, and maybe my favorite female figure, period. No wonder it came number 1 with a bullet on my most improved figures list video I did way back when. It's a great figure, and a great update to the original.
There are only 2 tiny points of criticism I have, and they're basically nitpicks.
There's no patch on her arm anymore, and her hair, while looking terrific, is molded in a constant blowing in the wind shape.
But really, these things don't matter in the slightest.
By the way, the coat is technically removable, but it's hard to do and pretty pointless since her arms are the color of the coat, so it would just look weird. Also, I'm not undressing women on this channel.
If you want to see that kind of thing, I'm sure there's a website or 2 on the net that cater to your needs.
The detailing here is incredible, especially on the hair and the folds in the coat. So yeah, overall, just a great figure.
That brings us to the last retail toy release of the character.
So meet Agent Courtney CoverGirl Krieger. This figure was released in 2009 with some original body parts. Her head, arms and lower legs are new, but the rest is from a Lady J figure. This toy was part of the Rise of Cobra movie toy line, explaining why she looks radically different from the previous figures. She's wearing the standard G.I.Joe uniform from that movie, grey with, darker grey camo. Which, on the one hand, I like since it brings uniformity,
But on the other hand, it robs the Joes of individuality.
sculpting and detailing is on par with what you'd expect from figures in that line, and I will once again point out how far face sculpting has come since 1983. There's not much more to say here, except the unfortunate way the female bodies from this line are way too freaking thin. Just compare a freaking abdomen to previous figures. Have the guys, and I'm assuming they're guys, but I feel this is a pretty safe bet, that designed these toys ever seen a real woman?
Ugh.
And that's it for the toys. There was one more figure, a Collectors Club exclusive, but I don't have it, so I can't really talk about it. Now, the way things usually go on the show, this is where I'd point out that CoverGirl was a vehicle driver, so it would be time to talk about the Wolverine.
But guess what? From this year on, I'm changing things up a little.
Meaning that some vehicles will get their own episode whether they had a driver or not. So look forward to a separate Wolverine review soon.
With that, it's time to talk about the character, starting with the file card.
CoverGirl was a high fashion model, hence the codename, who grew disillusioned with her job, so she joined the army to find a new direction in her life.
As you do.
There, she attended armor and tech schools to become an expert mechanic and armor driver. She sought out these decidedly non-stereotypical girly skills to work against her beauty and the assumptions people had of her being a model.
You know, I really like this. G.I. Joe has a good track record of not portraying women in a stereotypical way, and this is a good example of that.
It's a little undercut by the last line on the card though, which states that her self-assurance and stunning good looks reduce most men to stuttering fools.
Luckily, this bit was mostly ignored in other media. Mostly.
The comic pack file card says mostly the same thing, emphasizing that she's a great mechanic that can fix practically anything. The movie file card has nothing in common with the prior ones except her name, as this really is a completely different character. Instead of a mechanic, she's a commando and assistant to General Hawk. She's a glorified secretary, basically.
Then the card outright lies to you.
By saying she uses her commando training to fearlessly face the forces that attack G.I. Joe headquarters.
Yeah, that doesn't happen in the movie, like, at all.
Instead, well, she's Hawk's assistant alright, but gets killed by Zartan, who runs her through with a sword from the back before she can do anything.
This was frustrating to see.
There are two good things I can say about her movie appearance though. For one thing, she was a blonde, which I assume was an homage to her first appearance in the cartoon, more on that later. And she was played by Karolina Kurkova, who is an actual model and cover girl. That was a really nice touch. And those were the file cards, and I guess her movie appearance too, since there's nothing left to say about that.
So let's move on to the other media.
In the cartoon, she debuted in the Mass Device miniseries, but as a blonde. This was because the animators hadn't gotten the final design of the character yet. If you watched my Mass Device review, I mentioned many early prototype toys they used in that series.
The Mass Device also had her best moment in the cartoon series.
When she saved the team from being gassed and blown up by a booby-trapped Cobra cylinder. For the rest of the cartoon, she has her more accurate brown hair, and often has to put up with Shipwreck hitting on her. This comical pairing does mean she's a regular in the series, and she gets to do stuff unlike some other vehicle drivers. Hi there, Heavy Metal!
Let's move on to the comics.
She makes her debut in issue 16 during a training exercise.
And honestly, it could have been better.
Her first line of dialogue is saying she was taking a beauty sleep, but I'm choosing to believe she was just kidding. The next part, however, is a bit more cringy, as Scarlet says she wants to see how CoverGirl holds up in a real battle, prompting the reply, "Better than your face has, dearie."
Oh, dearie, indeed.
When two women meet in fiction, do they really always have to get into a catfight? It's just dumb, and it was dumb in 1983 too. And the comic regularly pulls this crap, you know. In the issue, she takes out a bunch of his tanks and does admit a real firefight is very unforgiving. She had a strong debut, but didn't do all that much noteworthy later in the series. Being a vehicle driver, this wasn't uncommon. Hi again, Heavy Metal.
There was this one issue of the comic, but let's not talk about that right now.
For a last bit of trivia, the name Courtney Krieger is used for a guest character on the NCIS episode Identity Crisis. She's an FBI agent assigned to hunt down terrorists. The name is an homage to the G.I. Joe character.
And that was CoverGirl.
And you know, despite her not being that prominent, she's certainly always been a fan favorite. And it's a crying shame she got so few toys. But one of them was really good, so that makes up for it a little.
Well, I'll see you next time, everybody. And hey, why not like, share, and subscribe if that's your thing?